Wales. Land of medieval castles. Land of green mountains. Land of cliffs and ancient legends. A thin mist wraps around the peaks of Snowdonia. A red dragon waves proudly on the flags. The sea carves spectacular bays and coastlines. Welcome to Wales. Welcome to the mountainous peninsula west of England. Known as Camry in its Celtic language, this is a place where sheep graze among stone walls, where medieval castles rise on green hills, and where rugby unites an entire nation. But let's start from the beginning. Wales extends into the United Kingdom as a small, mountainous peninsula, surrounded by the sea on three sides and dominated by the majestic Mount Snowdon, which rises as the highest peak of this land. The peninsula is a concentration of natural wonders, compressed into a narrow space, and hosts no fewer than 3 national parks. Here, in fact, we find Snowdonia, Brecon Beacons, and the Pembrokeshire Coast, which together cover about 20% of the national territory. Beyond these natural sanctuaries, a very long and varied coastline winds for over 1,200 kilometers, offering spectacular cliffs, sandy bays, and ancient lighthouses that have guided sailors for centuries. This earthly paradise, furthermore, lives to the rhythm of a millennial pastoral tradition. With about 3 million inhabitants and 11 million sheep, the ratio is about 4 sheep for every person, and sheep farming has shaped the landscape for millennia, creating those characteristic green meadows bordered by stone walls that define the rural Welsh soul. In this landscape, Wales stands as one of the lands with the highest density of castles in the world, and its historical richness manifests in every corner. From medieval castles like Caernarfon and Conwy, witnesses of the English occupation of the 13th century, to the mysterious ruins scattered among the hills, up to the majestic castle of Caerphilly, the second largest in Great Britain. Continuing along the Pembrokeshire coastal path, considered one of the most beautiful in Europe, unfolds a journey that crosses time more than space, suspended between vertiginous cliffs and bays that seem to never end. The sound of Welsh permeates the air of valleys and cities, being this a Celtic language that is still taught in schools and spoken fluently by about 20% of the population, and remaining one of the oldest languages in Europe still living. And then there are the passions of this land, like rugby, for example, which in Welsh stadiums merges with national identity in a mix of pure emotions. The Principality Stadium in Cardiff, with its 74,500 spectators, during international matches makes the entire country stop, transforming this sport into a ritual that unites communities and traditions. This land finally is also a place rich in symbols, with its flag that shows a red dragon on a white and green background, making it one of the few countries in the world with a dragon in the flag, symbol of strength and Celtic resistance that watches over the destiny of this nation. Wales, therefore, is much more than a simple peninsula. It is an entire world, a place that continues to tell its ancient story to anyone who has eyes to see and heart to feel. But now, let's go discover the most incredible and iconic places of this nation. Snowdonia. The mountains rise like giants while the mist moves between the oldest valleys in Europe. Here, Mount Snowdon towers at 1,085 meters, conquerable through trails that wind between crystalline lakes and pastures, where sheep dot the landscape. Green expanses alternate with oak forests, where moss covers the boulders, and the undergrowth smells of wet ferns, while beaches extend at the foot of medieval castles, perched on rocky promontories. In Welsh, this place means land of eagles, and even today, these wild landscapes preserve that primordial majesty. The rocks date back 500 million years, when all this was ocean floor. Every stone, therefore, is a chapter of geology that you can touch with your own hands, while the wind carries the echo of Celtic legends that still today make the hearts of local inhabitants beat. Cardiff. The Welsh capital pulses with contemporary energy without forgetting its Celtic roots. Cardiff Bay, transformed from industrial port into a cutting-edge recreational area, hosts the Wales Millennium Centre, which is a golden giant of steel and slate that reflects the light of the sea. The castle instead hides 2,000 years of stratified history, from Roman foundations to opulent Victorian rooms, with decorations and frescoes that tell Arthurian legends. And then there's the National Museum, which houses one of the most important Impressionist art collections in Europe, while the university animates the city center with thousands of students who fill pubs and cafes in various neighborhoods. Cardiff is the only European capital where you'll hear speaking and singing in two languages on the street, both Welsh and English, which here intertwine in all daily conversations. Caernarfon Castle. Witness to 700 years of history, this castle is the symbol of royal power in the heart of Wales. The polygonal walls, inspired by the fortifications of Constantinople, rise from the shores of Menai Strait like stone giants. Here, the first English Prince of Wales was born in 1284, while in 1969 Prince Charles was invested with the title of Prince in a worldwide ceremony. The castle's polygonal towers soar to approximately 25 meters, characterized by distinctive alternating bands of light limestone and dark sandstone. The walled town, furthermore, preserves much of its medieval walls, and walking on the ramparts means following in the footsteps of sentries who for centuries scanned the horizon. During summer festivals, the castle hosts medieval-themed shows and historical reenactments, featuring traditional Welsh music performances and demonstrations of ancient crafts. Rhossili Bay. Imagine 5 kilometers of golden sand, stretching between two wild promontories. Rhossili Bay is not just a beach, it's a natural theater where the Atlantic Ocean stages its most powerful show. The coastline that embraces the bay is a triumph of contrasts. In fact, there are the soft, grassy dunes that wave in the wind, while the imposing sandstone cliffs fall sheer into the ocean. These rocky walls, sculpted by millennia of storms, show ancient geological layers and open into secret caves where the water reflects the shades of the rock. From the village of Rhossili, perched 130 meters above sea level, the gaze spans to the infinite horizon. And when the sun sets behind Worm's Head Island, the bay transforms into a kaleidoscope of gold and purple. And the silence is broken only by the cry of seagulls and by the eternal whisper of the ocean. Brecon Beacons. In the heart of southern Wales extends a world made of gentle hills and spectacular waterfalls. The Brecon Beacons take their name from the fires that once lit on the peaks to communicate at distance. Today, however, these natural beacons guide trekking lovers, while at night the Milky Way lights up above explorers' heads like a river of stars. The Four Waterfalls Trail leads into a natural amphitheater, where water falls thunderously among Jurassic ferns, creating rainbows in the mist. Caernarfon, finally, the highest peak at 886 meters, offers views that span to the sea, so that on clear days you can see up to 3 different counties. Conwy. Suspended between sky and sea, Conwy Castle is a medieval fortress that dominates the estuary like a guardian. Built in just 4 years by Edward I in 1283, this masterpiece of medieval military architecture counts 8 massive towers, connected by walls that embrace the town below. Walking along the ramparts means traveling back 700 years, when archers and knights controlled every movement in the harbor. The walled town of Conwy, furthermore, is one of the best preserved in Europe, with its stone streets that lead to the smallest house in Great Britain, just 1.8 meters wide. From the castle, you can also admire Telford's suspension bridge, an engineering work from 1826 that looks like a steel jewel left above the waters. Tenby. The pastel-colored houses overlook the harbor like in a vintage postcard, creating one of the most photographed panoramas in Wales. Tenby is a medieval walled town that rises on a limestone cliff, with its 13th century walls still intact, that recalls stories of pirates and merchants. The harbor empties and fills with the tides, while North Beach and South Beach extend at the foot of the old town, separated by Castle Hill, where the remains of a Norman castle watch the marine horizon. St. Catherine's Island Fort, instead, built on a small island reachable on foot during low tide, was erected in the Napoleonic era to defend the coast from French invasions, and today offers one of the most spectacular panoramic points of the bay. Every alley in the town leads to a new discovery, with art galleries, historic pubs, and antique shops that preserve the atmosphere of a fishing village, magically remained outside of time. Caerphilly Castle. What happens when a Norman baron decides to build the most impregnable fortress in Wales? Caerphilly Castle is born, a colossus of grey stone that challenges the laws of physics with its leaning tower that is more inclined than the one in Pisa, Italy. Gilbert de Clare wasn't joking when he conceived this labyrinth of walls, moats, and towers that cover 12 hectares of land. The castle literally floats on water, surrounded by a system of artificial lakes so ingenious that besiegers went mad before even approaching the walls. Its concentric walls, moreover, follow one another like Russian dolls and represent a masterpiece of medieval military architecture. Crossing the drawbridge, you can still perceive the echo of battles that made these stones tremble. Anglesey. An island connected to the mainland by a historic bridge from 1826. Anglesey is a particular island. Indeed, here once lived the Druids, who were the ancient Celtic priests who practiced mysterious rites. Today you can visit Beaumaris Castle, which is a medieval fort left unfinished, but considered a perfect example of military architecture. The island has beautiful beaches with white sand, like Llangollen Beach, famous for the love stories of the Welsh patron saint of lovers. From April to August instead, on the small island of Puffin Island arrive thousands of puffins, which are those white and black little birds with orange beaks that look like small penguins. Finally, there's also the South Stack Lighthouse, perched on a 60-meter cliff that has guided ships since 1809 and is reachable through a staircase of 400 steps that descends vertically toward the sea. Pontcysyllte Aqueduct. Suspended 38 meters high, it's the highest navigable bridge in the world, almost a challenge thrown at gravity by Thomas Telford, its designer, in 1805. This aqueduct literally carries the water of the Llangollen Canal 38 meters high, suspended above the valley of the River Dee. The boats navigate in a wrought iron basin 307 meters long, supported by 18 arches of massive stone. Navigating these waters therefore means floating among the clouds, with the landscape of northern Wales developing below, dotted with farms and woods. Moreover, this water ribbon is only 3 meters wide, and the bravest lean over the parapet to feel the vertigo. UNESCO has recognized this marvel as a World Heritage Site, and there's no wonder for this triumph of human ingenuity over wild nature. Pembrokeshire Coast. Imagine 186 kilometers of wild coast, where the Atlantic Ocean has sculpted masterpieces in rock. The golden cliffs of Pembrokeshire plunge into turquoise waters, creating hidden bays that seem straight out of an adventure film. Here, gray seals sunbathe on boulders, unaware of kayakers who navigate silently between the waves. The Pembrokeshire Coast Path, which is a coastal trail that embraces the entire peninsula, leads through fishing villages where time seems to have stopped in the 19th century. The colorful houses of Tenby, instead, reflect in the sea, while puffins, which are those charming birds with colorful beaks, nest on offshore islands. The magic of this place is that every bay tells a different story, also thanks to Norman castles that rise on promontories, witnesses to battles that shaped Welsh history. Harlech Castle. Perched on a 60-meter cliff that dominates Cardiff Bay, Harlech is the very definition of an impregnable fortress. Edward I of England wanted it here in 1283 to quell Welsh revolts, and its strategic position tells a story of conquests and resistance that gives you chills. The local sandstone walls rise like dragon teeth against the sky, while the 4 cylindrical towers look like clenched fists ready to repel any attack. The castle resisted the longest siege in British history, lasting 7 months during the War of the Roses. From its walls, the gaze spans from the mountains of Snowdonia to the coasts of Ireland on the clearest days. At the foot of the fortress, moreover, the small village of Harlech nestles among the green hills with its stone houses, while the coast extends in wide sandy beaches, dotted with dunes covered with seagrass. Llandudno. Welcome to the Queen of Welsh seaside resorts, where Victorian elegance meets modern fun. Llandudno nestles in a perfect bay between two limestone promontories, Great Orme and Little Orme. The Great Orme promontory, which means Great Sea Serpent, unfolds for 207 meters, offering incredible views of the coast. The Victorian Pier extends for 700 meters into the Irish Sea and is a walkway of wrought iron and wood where time flows between ice cream, fish and chips, and the sound of waves. The Crescent Beach, furthermore, is protected from Atlantic winds, making it perfect for families with children. Finally, it should be remembered that this city is linked to the story of Alice's adventures in Wonderland. As the real Alice, who was Alice Little, spent her summer holidays here, and today a statue of the White Rabbit stands on the promenade. Aberystwyth. It's the place where Welsh youth meets the eternity of the ocean, uniting university life and maritime tradition. This seaside town, nestled between two hills on the western coast of Wales, is a perfect cocktail of academia and sea salt that conquers at first sight. Aberystwyth Castle, built in the 13th century by Edward I, overlooks the bay with its stone walls kissed by the Atlantic wind, offering a breathtaking view of the ocean and the town. The waterfront winds between the two promontories, with the Victorian-style colored houses that reflect in the water. Constitution Hill, instead, rises like a green guardian and is reachable with a funicular from 1896 that climbs through the meadows like a fairy tale train. From the harbor, finally, fishermen depart at dawn, while seagulls draw perfect circles above the waves. Criccieth Castle. On a promontory that cuts the bay like the bow of a ship, Criccieth Castle watches over the waters of Cardigan Bay for over 700 years. This is not a castle built by the English to dominate conquered territory, but it's a pure Welsh fortress built by local princes as a symbol of independence of this land. The entrance gate presents two twin towers, while the walls follow the natural contours of the rock in a perfect embrace between architecture and landscape. From the castle, the view spans over Snowdonia on one side and over the Llŷn Peninsula on the other, and this panorama makes you understand why this place was chosen as a bastion of Welsh resistance. beach below, moreover, curves like a golden crescent. It's simply a castle that doesn't conquer but seduces. Barmouth. It nestles between the Snowdonia Mountains and the sea, and is a small Welsh town that guards one of the country's most evocative coastlines. Its colored houses climb the hills, while the famous Victorian railway bridge, 800 meters long, majestically crosses the Modoc estuary. But it's Barmouth Beach that's the real jewel. 3 kilometers of golden sand where the estuary meets the ocean, creating a postcard scenery with mountains that dive directly into the sea. This is not just any beach, but a world unto itself where time slows down. During high tide, sailboats float on the waves, while at low tide, expanses of sand dotted with pools are revealed, where children hunt crabs among the rocks. Llangollen. In the heart of the Dee Valley, it's a jewel that shines with music, history, and fairy tale landscapes. This small Welsh town is famous throughout the world for the international musical Eisteddfod, a festival that every July transforms the streets into a mix of traditional costumes and melodies. The castle ruins survey the valley from above, while the River Dee flows along the center, crossed by a medieval stone bridge. Its waters hide intense rapids that attract kayakers and canoeists from all over Great Britain, ready to challenge the currents among the rocks. From here departs the canal that leads to the Pontcysyllte Aqueduct, and traditional boats pulled by horses move slowly along the green banks, recreating the atmosphere of 19th century transport. The air smells of wild lupins, and the historic center preserves traditional shops and weekly markets, where you can still breathe the authentic Welsh atmosphere. Menai Suspension Bridge. The world's first modern suspension bridge still oscillates every time a gust of wind crosses the Menai Strait. Designed in 1826, this giant of iron and stone connects Anglesey to the Welsh mainland with a span of 176 meters that at the time seemed impossible. Its wrought iron chains weigh over 2,000 tons and sway gently when the Atlantic wind blows strong. Below, the waters of the strait change direction twice a day following the tides, creating currents so strong that Victorian sailors feared them more than storms. The pylons are of limestone, while from the top of the bridge the panorama embraces Snowdonia on one side and the jagged coasts of Anglesey on the other. Pistyll Rhaeadr Waterfall. At the foot of the Berwyn Mountains hides a secret that takes your breath away, and it's Pistyll Rhaeadr, the highest waterfall in Wales with its 73 meters of free fall. The Welsh name means waterfall spring, and when you arrive here, you understand why the ancients considered it sacred. The water plunges from a wall of dark rock in 3 spectacular jumps, forming a natural pool so crystalline that it reflects the sky like a mirror. Even the noise is hypnotic, a continuous thunder that makes your chest vibrate and cancels every thought. The path to reach it winds among giant ferns and emerald moss that grows everywhere. The black-faced sheep watch curiously from the surrounding meadows, while the scent of wild heather mixes with the water spray. Prince of Wales Bridge. This is not a simple bridge, but one of the vital arteries that unite England to Wales, suspended above the turbulent waters of the River Severn. Inaugurated in 1996, it's a marvel of engineering, over 5 kilometers long, that challenges the most extreme tides in Europe. With its elegant lines and slender spans, it seems to almost dance above the river, pushed by wind and light. Every day, thousands of vehicles cross it without realizing they're above a work that required years of calculations, studies on currents, and construction in prohibitive conditions. The pylons sink into the muddy bed of the Severn and resist tides that can exceed 14 meters, among the highest in the world. It's here that modern engineering has bent nature to the service of travel, creating an invisible but essential connection between 2 nations that share the same island and the same horizon. Llŷn Peninsula. Stretching into the Atlantic Ocean like a finger pointed toward Ireland. The Llŷn Peninsula is the last strip of land before the infinite. The coast winds for over 160 kilometers in a succession of dream beaches. The sheltered bays and sandy expanses alternate with wild stretches where Atlantic waves crash forcefully against the sea stacks. At Pontcysyllte, there's St. Peter's Church that rises with its medieval tower, while at the western tip, Aberdaron gathers around its sandy bay, the last refuge before the open ocean. In the interior, the three peaks of Llŷn Eiffel rise like guardians, dominating the peninsula with their ancient Celtic fortresses. And then there's the wind, constant and impetuous, that brings stories of monks and sailors, while the waves crash on the pebbles for millennia now. It's a world apart, where the modern slows down and the ancient takes over. Denbigh Castle. On top of a hill that dominates the Clwyd Valley, rise the ruins of Denbigh Castle. This is not the classic postcard castle, but a labyrinth of gray stones that recalls battles, betrayals, and shattered dreams. Built in 1284, the castle was meant to be the pearl of English fortresses in Wales. But as you can see, history wanted it differently. Besieged, conquered, reconquered, and finally demolished during the Civil War, today it shows its wounds with pride. The polygonal walls follow the contours of the rock, while from the castle, the view spans across the rolling hills of North Wales, dotted with farms. The Black Ravens, therefore, are the only remaining witnesses to 700 years of tumultuous history. Aber Falls. In the heart of Snowdonia, where the mountains meet the sea, hides a spectacle that makes the heart beat. And we're talking about the Aber Falls. The river Afon Goch plunges from a 37-meter precipice, creating a water curtain that changes with each season. The path to reach them crosses a valley where centenary oaks and towering ferns grow. The air instead smells of moss and wet earth, while the noise of falling water grows gradually until it becomes a roar that fills all the space. In spring, wild bluebells tinge the undergrowth cobalt blue, creating a carpet. The locals tell that on full moon nights, you can still hear the songs of Welsh sirens, who protect this magical place from prying eyes. Rhyl. It stretches along the Irish Sea coast like a Victorian-era postcard that has managed to renew itself. This Welsh seaside town enchants with its wide golden beaches and the waterfront that winds for kilometers, dotted with kiosks and carousels that evoke the nostalgic atmosphere of British seaside resorts. The traditional houses with slate roofs alternate with modern attractions like the Seaquarium, while the city evolves to the rhythm of the tides between the salty scent of the air and the call of seagulls. Its public gardens and the streets of the historic center create a welcoming environment, making this Welsh pearl an ideal destination for families and travelers seeking coastal authenticity. The sandy beach, moreover, extends for kilometers, dotted with colorful huts and striped windbreaks. Ynys Gored Goch. In the middle of the Menai River estuary hides an island that seems to come out of a fairy tale. It's called Ynys Gored Goch, which in Welsh means Island of the Red Dam. This small paradise of 1 hectare hosts a 19th century farm, surrounded by gardens, and the white and gray stone houses seem to grow directly from the rock. Currently, the island is privately owned and is used as a holiday home. It was connected to the electrical and water network in 1997, but remains accessible exclusively by boat. Here, black cormorants dive into the fish-rich waters, while gray seals peek curiously among the waves to observe the rare visitors. Gower Peninsula. It was the first so-called area of outstanding natural beauty in the United Kingdom, and faces the Atlantic like a hand stretched toward the horizon. Gower Peninsula is where surf meets history, with the perfect waves of Llangollen Beach attracting surfers from all over Europe. while nearby the three limestone cliffs that emerge from golden sand create a postcard scenery. Here you'll find Rhossili Bay, often voted among the most beautiful beaches in the world, where 5 kilometers of unspoiled sand curve in a perfect arc. The dunes behind the beach extend for kilometers, offering refuge to rare wild orchids and migratory birds, and lead to breathtaking panoramic points. At sunset, when the sun sets the horizon ablaze, Worm's Head, which is a rocky tongue accessible only at low tide, becomes the perfect stage for an unforgettable natural spectacle. Concluding this visual journey through Wales, we have moved from the charm of its green valleys and medieval castles to the spectacular waterfalls and coastal landscapes, exploring together not only places, but also traditions that make every corner of this land unique. We hope that the images and stories told have enriched your knowledge and stimulated the desire to personally explore the extraordinary beauty of this fascinating country.